Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded street, voices shouting from every direction, neon lights pulling your eyes left and right, advertisements telling you what to buy, people telling you who to be, and fears whispering what you should avoid. That's the world we live in every single day, loud, chaotic, persuasive, and in that chaos, there's one battlefield that decides everything: your mind. Whoever controls it controls your life. Most people don't even realize they've already surrendered that control. They think their choices are theirs, when really they're echoes of culture, family expectations, social media trends, and invisible rules they never stop to question. They're running on autopilot, following someone else's script, mistaking reaction for thought. But here's the truth: you were never meant to be a copy of anyone else. You were meant to think for yourself, to design your own vision, to shape reality with ideas rooted in clarity, discipline, and courage. So today, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to give you something far more powerful. I will teach you how to think correctly, not because I want to control your mind, but because I want you to finally own it. Ownership of mind means mastering the one territory that no one else can ever truly control unless you hand them the keys. The mind is the original battlefield, the command center where every choice, every belief, every action begins. Too often people underestimate how powerful it is to take charge of your own thoughts, how much influence you give away when you allow outside forces to decide what you believe, what you fear, and what you chase. From birth, the world begins pouring noise into your head. Family tells you who they think you are. School tells you what you're supposed to know. Media flashes images of what success should look like, and society builds invisible rules about what paths are acceptable. If you don't step back and claim ownership, your entire outlook gets programmed without your permission, and you end up living someone else's vision instead of your own. Owning your mind doesn't mean blocking out the world completely. It means filtering. It means knowing how to separate what aligns with your truth from what is just manipulation or distraction. Imagine your mind like a house. If you don't guard the door, anyone can walk in, leave their mess, and even rearrange the furniture until you barely recognize your own space. But when you stand at that door with awareness, you choose what comes in, what stays, and what has no place there. You decide the kind of environment your thoughts live in, and that determines the kind of life you build. This ownership also requires brutal honesty with yourself. You can't claim control over your thoughts if you keep hiding behind excuses, old patterns, or borrowed opinions. You've got to ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Did you build that belief through experience, reflection, and evidence, or did you inherit it because it was the loudest voice in the room? Too many people confuse thinking with echoing. Ownership is breaking that cycle, teaching your mind to generate original thought rooted in your values and your vision, not just repeating whatever was planted there. Another part of ownership is learning discipline. The mind left unchecked is like a wild horse. It'll run in circles, chase impulses, and exhaust itself. Discipline is the reins. It's training your focus so your thoughts serve your purpose instead of scattering your energy in every direction. Distractions are endless, temptations never stop, and negativity is contagious. If you own your mind, you learn to redirect that energy, to silence the noise when it's time to create, and to stay steady when emotions try to hijack your clarity. Ownership also means responsibility. Once you take control of your mind, you can't keep blaming others for where you are. It's no longer about what people did to you, what opportunities you didn't get, or what cards you were dealt. It becomes about how you think about those circumstances and what you decide to do next. That shift alone is liberation, because once you realize you control your perception, you also control your potential. Long-term vision is about training your mind to look past the moment and see the bigger picture that others overlook. Most people live caught in the urgency of now, reacting to whatever shows up in front of them, whether it's problems, opportunities, or distractions. When you think only in the short term, your decisions become survival moves, and survival is often reactive, desperate, and short-sighted. Long-term vision is the opposite. It's stepping back, zooming out, and aligning your present actions with a future outcome you've deliberately chosen. It means you don't just think about where you are today, but about who you want to become, and how every move either pushes you closer to that or pulls you further away. A long-term thinker doesn't get seduced by quick wins or discouraged by early losses. They understand that both are temporary, just part of a larger journey. Someone with vision might sacrifice immediate comfort to gain something greater later, whether that's financial independence, mastery of a skill, or building a legacy that outlives them. It's the mindset of planting seeds instead of eating them. Most people want fruit right away, but those who think long-term know that patience and care are what turn a single seed into an orchard. This kind of thinking requires a shift in perspective. It's not about ignoring the present moment, but about connecting the present to the future. Every action becomes a brick laid in the foundation of something bigger. When you think long-term, you start asking different questions. Instead of, will this make me money now, you ask, will this put me in a position to grow for the next 10 years? Instead of, does this feel good today? You ask, will this decision bring me closer to the life I want 5 years from now? That shift turns your thoughts into a compass instead of a clock. You're guided by direction rather than trapped by deadlines. Another important part of long-term vision is resilience. When challenges hit, a short-term mindset says, this is the end. A long-term mindset says, this is just a chapter. That difference changes how you experience setbacks. You stop treating them as permanent failures and start viewing them as part of the process. The mind that can stretch its vision over years doesn't collapse at every roadblock because it sees beyond the obstacle to the destination waiting on the other side. Discipline becomes natural when you have long-term vision because you understand the payoff. Sacrificing a night of distraction to work on your craft makes sense when you've pictured where mastery will take you. Passing on a flashy purchase feels easier when you can already see the wealth you're building. Vision turns sacrifice into strategy. Without it, sacrifice feels like loss. With it, sacrifice feels like investment. Thinking long-term also builds confidence. When you can clearly imagine a future and trace the path that leads to it, doubt has less power over you. You no longer move aimlessly or wonder if your actions matter. You know that every decision is a step toward a horizon you've chosen. That clarity alone gives you strength that short-term thinkers can't match. Self-discipline as wealth is an idea rooted in the understanding that how you think and act consistently is more valuable than money handed to you. Discipline is the invisible currency that builds every visible form of success. It's the difference between people who dream of results and those who create results. When you look at anyone who's built something lasting, whether it's a business, an art form, a career, or a legacy, you'll find discipline at the core. Talent can spark the beginning, opportunity can open doors, but without discipline, those sparks burn out and those doors eventually close. Correct thinking demands discipline because the mind naturally leans toward comfort, distraction, and impulse. Without discipline, thoughts turn into excuses. With discipline, thoughts transform into actions that create value. Many people confuse intelligence with success, but intelligence without discipline is wasted potential. Someone with average knowledge but extraordinary discipline can outpace someone with raw brilliance who lacks control. Wealth in this sense is not just financial, it's the abundance of mastery, consistency, and trust in your own ability to execute. Discipline builds wealth by stacking small, repeated actions into large outcomes. It's the quiet power of showing up when you don't feel like it, staying consistent when the excitement fades, and holding yourself accountable when nobody's watching. This is how businesses grow, bodies transform, skills sharpen, and reputations solidify. One disciplined hour each day compounds into years of progress, while one undisciplined choice can undo months of effort. Correct thinking means recognizing the compounding effect of discipline and treating it like the most important investment you can make. There's also freedom in discipline, which sounds like a contradiction but isn't. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want whenever you want, but that kind of freedom often leads to chaos and regret. Real freedom comes from having control over yourself, your schedule, and your impulses. A disciplined person may restrict themselves in the moment, but those restrictions create options later. Skipping pleasures today to build tomorrow's wealth is not punishment, it's delayed gratification, which is the backbone of independence. Discipline also separates builders from consumers. The consumer mind chases trends, distractions, and instant results, while the disciplined mind builds something sustainable. For example, a person with no control over their spending habits might chase every new gadget, while the disciplined person invests, saves, and eventually owns the type of wealth that allows them to buy those same gadgets without stress. That same principle applies to knowledge, health, and relationships. Discipline makes sure what you put in today will serve you tomorrow. Most importantly, self-discipline is wealth because it cannot be stolen. Money can be lost, opportunities can dry up, and circumstances can change overnight. But the disciplined mind carries its value everywhere. It allows you to rebuild if you lose, adapt when things shift, and create even when resources are scarce. Discipline ensures that you always have the tools within yourself to generate value, no matter the environment. Questioning everything is the foundation of correct thinking because it challenges the automatic patterns that most people follow without realizing. From childhood, people are conditioned to accept rules, beliefs, and systems as fixed truths. Parents, teachers, media, and culture shape what's considered normal, and often these ideas are passed down without being tested. To think correctly means refusing to live as an echo. It means refusing to accept information simply because it came from authority, tradition, or repetition. Instead, it demands curiosity, skepticism, and the courage to look deeper than the surface. When you question everything, you train your mind to investigate motives, context, and consequences. You stop taking statements at face value and start asking what lies beneath. For example, when someone tells you success means money, you ask who benefits from that definition. When the news sells fear, you ask why fear is profitable. When society tells you there's only one path to stability, you ask if that path was designed to limit or liberate. This habit of questioning turns your mind from a receiver into a filter, able to separate truth from manipulation. Questioning is not about constant doubt for the sake of it. It's about searching for clarity. A person who questions everything isn't negative, they're deliberate. They weigh evidence, analyze patterns, and demand reasons instead of blindly following. This builds intellectual strength the same way exercise builds physical strength. Each time you challenge an idea, you're stretching the muscles of your mind, and over time, you develop the endurance to think independently even in environments where conformity is expected. The danger of not questioning is that you become programmable. Anyone with enough influence can direct your thoughts, choices, and emotions. Marketing, politics, and social media are built on this weakness. They thrive on people who never stop to ask why they believe what they believe. But once you cultivate the habit of questioning, you become harder to manipulate. You develop mental defenses that protect you from being swayed by every new trend or emotional appeal. Correct thinking emerges because you test ideas before adopting them, making sure they align with your principles and your long-term vision. Questioning also sparks innovation. Every breakthrough in history came from someone asking, "Why does it have to be this way?" Or, "What if we tried something different?" Without questioning, progress stalls, and people settle for mediocrity. With questioning, new paths are discovered, and solutions appear where none seemed possible. The same applies on a personal level. If you're stuck in a cycle, questioning helps you realize whether the cycle was chosen by you or imposed on you. That awareness alone can shift your entire trajectory. At its core, questioning everything means valuing truth over comfort. It means being willing to challenge beliefs you've held for years if they no longer serve you. It means understanding that growth requires discomfort, and that asking hard questions is often the first step to liberation. The more you practice this, the sharper your mind becomes, and the less likely you are to be trapped by illusions. Resilience over reaction is the discipline of training the mind to respond with strategy instead of surrendering to impulse when life throws challenges your way. Most people live in reaction mode, allowing emotions to dictate their choices. They get angry and lash out. They feel fear and freeze. They experience loss and sink into despair. Reaction is natural, but it is also short-sighted. It pulls you into the heat of the moment and blinds you from the bigger picture. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to absorb the impact, process it, and then move forward with intention instead of chaos. Correct thinking demands resilience because life is unpredictable. Plans collapse, people betray, opportunities vanish, and setbacks appear out of nowhere. A reactive mind interprets these moments as final, as proof that the journey is over. But a resilient mind understands that setbacks are part of the process, not the end of it. Resilience doesn't deny pain or frustration. It simply refuses to let them dictate the outcome. It's the difference between saying, "This is the end," and "This is a lesson." That shift in thought creates space for growth instead of collapse. Resilience also gives you time, and time creates clarity. When you don't react immediately, you allow yourself to step back and see situations from multiple angles. A person who reacts too quickly may burn bridges, make poor decisions, or quit too early. A person with resilience, however, pauses long enough to evaluate. They might still feel the sting of emotion, but they don't let it write the story for them. They take control of the narrative by choosing their next step with awareness. Another part of resilience is adaptation. The world rarely matches your expectations perfectly, So flexibility becomes a survival skill. If one plan fails, resilience means you adjust the plan instead of abandoning the goal. Reaction says, "It didn't work, so I'm done." Resilience says, "It didn't work this way, so I'll find another way." This kind of thinking turns obstacles into stepping stones because each failure reveals a new angle to approach the challenge. The resilient mind sees setbacks as data, not as destiny. Resilience also builds trust in yourself. Every time you face difficulty and manage to rise again, you strengthen the belief that you can endure. That inner confidence becomes a resource you can draw on in future battles. A reactive mind always questions its ability to handle pressure, which creates a cycle of fear and hesitation. A resilient mind builds a track record of survival and progress, creating momentum that compounds over time. At its core, resilience over reaction is about ownership. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. That choice determines whether pain becomes paralysis or power. The resilient thinker doesn't ignore emotions, but they don't become slaves to them. Instead, they turn emotion into fuel, setback into strategy, and chaos into clarity, proving that resilience is not just survival but transformation. Building instead of just consuming is the practice of directing your mind toward creation, contribution, and ownership rather than passively taking in what others produce. Consumption is easy. It requires little more than attention and often leads to fleeting satisfaction. Building is harder. It requires vision, patience, and discipline. But building is what leaves a mark. Every product, business, movement, or piece of art that has shaped the world came from someone who chose to create instead of endlessly consuming. Correct thinking leans toward building because it understands that consumption may entertain or comfort you, but it rarely empowers you. Creation, on the other hand, multiplies value not just for you but for others. When your mind is stuck in consumption, you become dependent. You wait for others to provide entertainment, knowledge, or opportunity. You scroll endlessly, purchase impulsively, and live within cycles designed by someone else's vision. There's nothing inherently wrong with consuming. It's part of being human. But if that's all you do, you never activate your own potential. Building breaks that cycle. It forces you to take responsibility for shaping your world, rather than living in one shaped exclusively by others. Building doesn't always mean constructing businesses or physical objects. It can be building skills, relationships, communities, or even personal habits. For example, instead of consuming endless information online, you can build by writing your own perspective, teaching what you've learned, or creating solutions to problems you notice around you. Instead of consuming social media, you can build content that inspires or educates. Instead of consuming other people's wealth, you can build financial discipline that eventually creates independence. Every small act of creation is an investment in yourself and the people around you. Choosing to build also transforms how you view time. Consumers think in terms of entertainment and distraction, always chasing the next moment of satisfaction. Builders think in terms of legacy. They ask themselves how their efforts today will compound into value tomorrow. A builder sees time as raw material, something to be crafted into progress. Correct thinking means recognizing that every hour spent can either vanish in consumption or accumulate in creation. The builder chooses the latter more often than not. Another critical difference is that building develops resilience and mastery. Consumption doesn't stretch you, it only fills you temporarily. Building stretches your patience, challenges your discipline, and sharpens your creativity. The more you build, the more capable you become, and that capability itself is wealth. It cannot be taken from you the way a purchase can. It becomes part of who you are. Most importantly, building gives you agency. When you build, you stop waiting for someone else to hand you opportunities, answers, or validation. You produce them for yourself. You contribute instead of just receiving. You become a source instead of just an outlet. That shift from consumer to builder rewires the mind to think proactively, strategically, and purposefully, which is the essence of thinking correctly. So here we stand after traveling through the pillars of correct thinking. Ownership of your mind, the vision to see far beyond today, the discipline to align thought with action, the courage to question, the resilience to endure, and the drive to build instead of merely consume. These are not abstract ideas, they are tools, sharper than any blade, stronger than any shield, and they belong to you the moment you choose to use them. Correct thinking does not guarantee an easy path, but it guarantees a meaningful one. It equips you to navigate storms without losing your direction, to transform obstacles into opportunities, and to rise again when the world expects you to fall. It frees you from being a passenger in your own life and puts you firmly in the driver's seat, with your hands on the wheel and your eyes fixed on the horizon you've chosen. The greatest battles you will ever fight are not out there, but in here in your mind. Master that battlefield, and no force on earth can truly defeat you. So walk forward unshaken, unbroken, unstoppable, and think not just loudly, not just differently, but correctly.